Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest challenges of quantum is the marketing aspect of it. What are quantum computers good for now? What value do they bring? And some people have made the claim, oh, they're valueless. They don't have value because they're not doing these visionary types of things that people expect quantum computers to do. And I think that's an incorrect view. It's become an imperative for many of these places to develop their quantum computing capability. And what better way to anchor a quantum economy than with a quantum system? We will be able to get there within the 1 and 2 generations to be able to get to 100 and 1,000 logical qubits. I think the biggest move in the quantum industry is the move to logical qubit era from the physical qubit era.
Today we are exploring what it really means to commercialize quantum computing. Welcome to another episode of the Quantum Economy podcast. My guest is Justin Ging, Chief Product Officer at Atom Computing. With more than 2 decades of experience across Honeywell Quantum Solutions, today Quantinuum, Samsung and Bell Labs, Justin brings a unique perspective on turning breakthrough technology into real markets. We discuss the shift from the physical qubit to the logical qubit era, how brand and design play an important role in the quantum race, and why balancing optimism and responsibility is the key in an era of exponential progress. This is the Quantum Economy podcast with Justin Ging. Yeah, so Justin, first of all, thank you for coming on, and I want to start by addressing the elephant in the room, right? We are looking for logical qubits, and we want to stabilize quantum computing, but how do you go out and sell and market a product that we are still looking at, removing the noise of physical qubits, and how can we take the quantum hardware into a quantum economy where you can commercialize?
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest challenges of quantum is the marketing aspect of it. And I think for me, it starts at the heart of what your definition is. And a big part of it is realizing that what are quantum computers good for now? What value do they bring? And some people have made the claim, oh, they're valueless. They don't have value because they're not doing these visionary types of things that people expect quantum computers to do. And I think that's an incorrect view. The value actually comes from using quantum computers as a research tool. We as an industry are bootstrapping ourselves towards those fault-tolerant quantum computers to do what theory predicts that we'll be able to do. And along the way, using the quantum computer is a super valuable tool for research. How do you build better hardware? So you got to build something so that you can test and use and then build to your next generation. And how do you build algorithms with it? And so testing and using and understanding the full stack and the algorithms themselves. How do they work? How does the noise factor? People say, well, you can use simulators for doing a lot of the work, except that simulators start to break down once you add a certain number of qubits. You actually have to test on real physical hardware to see how the noise interacts. And so from a marketing point of view, there's a 2-part to it. There is selling the vision of what quantum computers will do, but there's a selling here and now. How can you use this quantum tool as an asset? So first is selling to the people who cares about a research tool. Well, researchers do. And so appealing to them with giving them the right tool set. So it goes back to marketing fundamentals, like describing what you have, what you're providing, what value you're offering to them. And so for researchers, the value is the tool set. Here, I'm giving you these capabilities. I'm giving you a number of qubits. I'm giving a certain high quality. I'm giving you certain features that you need for your algorithms, things like mid-circuit measurement and qubit reuse. So It's an amazing tool that not every quantum computer offers. But if you have that, that unlocks certain kinds of algorithms. Once had a customer say, wait, you can do that? I had something I did 2 years ago. I put it on a shelf because there was no quantum computer that could do that. So now I can pull that off the shelf and keep going in my research, really enabling people to explore different types of this type of research on quantum computers. So that's the fundamental. And the aspect of it is, well, that's not where the large money that everyone imagines from quantum computing comes from. it is from the eventual economically valuable applications. And so that's kind of second phase. Okay, so who wants to benefit from that? Well, most people would think like companies, enterprises, they should want this because it's going to be a big thing. Companies don't have that much money to invest in pure research. They're waiting until it's a much more defined, like value proposition is how many percent are you going to save me off my supply chain, or more specific, like what's my ROI going to be? And that's a very difficult thing to predict right now. And so it's actually not enterprises that are the primary target for quantum computers. They will be the users when it happens, but they're not the target right now. The market's actually shifted from quantum as a service, so buying some time on the quantum computer. That's much more about a researcher needing access, write a paper, do that kind of thing. The market's actually shifted to buying systems now. So a system where the motivation is a lot more around building a quantum ecosystem. Countries, regions, groups not wanting to be left behind in the quantum economy. Similar to concerns about AI or having supply chain within your borders, there's a concern that quantum is going to happen. And which countries, regions have that, they're going to get ahead, and the ones who don't are going to fall behind. So it's become an imperative for many of these places to develop their quantum computing capability. And what better way to anchor a quantum economy than with a quantum system? And so purchasing a system as a foundation for building that ecosystem. So yes, their local researchers are going to get on this thing and do research. That's a given. But also bringing in new users. So having the ability to pull in people who are not quantum knowledgeable, start training them on it, workforce development, and creating jobs around it. So when you have a system that inspires supply chain to come and be locally represented, and there's jobs associated with that, and kind of bootstrapping within the borders. And we've tested the idea of like, well, we could have the quantum computer in our facility in the US and you have 100%. It's your machine, but it happens to sit here. No. That's not even on the table. It must be within our borders because its purpose is to be there, to be dedicated access, and to build that economy. So, so coming back to your larger question of what is it to commercialize? It is a two-faceted approach. It's the here and now versus the what is coming. And the fact is that what's coming is coming much sooner than people have said. It's no longer this, it's 10 years plus away. It's within maybe 6-ish, 5 to 7 types of years. And so, yes, we have a couple generations more of systems to do, but it's actually coming very fast. And it's at the point where these groups need to get started now so that they're ready for that.
Yeah, well, this is beautiful. And that's why I wanted to have a chat with you, because your experience and your reflections on this is it's so profound in terms of how you set up a company, coming from that typical research spin-off out of academia into looking at something that is far ahead, and now kind of sort of seeing the commercialization in the near future, seeing how large players have evolved into your marketeers that bring quantum. Jensen Huang, you see Microsoft, you see the Googles, the AWSs, you see all of these like kind of sort of emotionalizing quantum, and therefore, I mean, the research part is interesting, and it's obvious to fuel the growth of the company, to secure funding, to keep going, and to have those generations of progress that you talked about. But how would you, from a structural part, go after industries then? How do you envision that second part that you talked about? What do you see as products where probably the cost of waiting is higher than being early into this very rapidly evolving technology? So I would assume that you would agree with me that being too late is a very big risk in this technology. So how would you approach the various industries, and what kind of industries do you look at? We talk about materials and finance. Where do you focus, and how do you approach that second part of that sales pipeline?
Yeah, I think enterprises, in terms of the timing, when should they get involved, that type of a question. There's an issue of ramp up time. So developing the capabilities within the companies, these enterprises, to use quantum computers takes a certain amount of familiarity. If you magically said, okay, here it is, here's the perfect quantum computer, it's massive, millions of qubits, go. No idea how to get started with that unless they have the right experts. And you could say, okay, well, at that point, they'll just hire the people that they're going to need. But there's going to be a scarcity there is already a scarcity of quantum experts. And so the idea is to ease into that with getting familiar with the systems. What does it take? And then particularly to their applications, starting to explore, like, what are the ways that this is going to help our business? And so the enterprises who have got involved are largely doing that aspect of it. It's like, what types of problems can I solve with these? And then to your question of like, well, which industries to focus on? We take a two-part view of that. One is pick an industry and you can find some quantum applications which will help that industry. Just between the things that quantum computers can do in terms of simulation and optimization and machine learning acceleration, there will be applications for it. And I'm always amazed at some of the types of industries we talk about in ranging from logistics and transportation. Some of these things seem more obvious, and chemistry and pharmaceuticals, okay, finance. You get into mining, and there's large grocery store chains, and there's all kinds of things that surprise me of like, oh, this industry is looking at it. In particular, we look at a lot of sustainability applications for quantum computing. A number of research efforts have been across the board on various aspects of that. We've looked at energy grid types of optimizations, things like that. But we as the hardware makers, we're open to working with any and all. We do predict that the chemistry types of things that involve molecular simulation, are going to be some of the earlier applications. So, just based on what we call resource estimations of like how many logical qubits do you need and what's the size of the code and things like that, it looks like those are the types of applications that start to actually show value first. So that could be any kind of molecular chemical types of things, or things like magnetic simulations and certain kinds of things, which are a little bit niche. Like not every company is looking for how do I simulate magnetic fields or things like that. But that's where it will start in our view. And so we kind of lean towards that. But actually right now on quantum computers, the most interesting application is one that's not interesting to enterprises at all, which is making logical qubits. So logical qubits are an algorithm that you run on physical qubits, and that's the most interesting thing. That's the most popular thing to be using quantum computers for at the moment.
Yeah, and I think this is also very interesting, because then you look at like the differentiation between being a hardware supplier and a sales organization towards the end customer. And I don't know, Adam, how you approached it. Is it more of a kind of sort of you start to work with the organization, define their tech spec, or have their kind of sort of ROI projections on some future hypothetical business case, or do you lean towards more structural partnerships with high performance computing partners? That you have I think you also have some strong partners on your side where you will look at eventually you maybe not being the one driving the use cases, but in some kind of hybrid model between CPUs, GPUs, and QPUs, and that type of structure that quantum computing companies might eventually be a part of that. That stack of various ways to process. So you look at more hybrid model and not necessarily the one that defines the use cases for the end consumer. How do you see that?
Yeah, I think to your last part of the question there, yes, absolutely, hybrid types of applications. Not everything is best done on a quantum computer. If you want to add 2 + 2, don't do it on a quantum computer. Can it do it? Yes, but not in an efficient way. So you shouldn't do that. And so there is this hybrid aspect. And one of the ways that materializes now is in things like machine learning and how can you use quantum to help AI or AI to help quantum. There are certain aspects of the training process where it appears quantum computing could accelerate, either with lower power or with faster results, to be able to contribute to that training process. but by no means doing the training for AI. So in those types of ways, QPUs as a coprocessor seems natural, and there are a lot of groups interested, HPC centers interested in what are all the kinds of problems that you have to figure out between how do you get them to work together nicely. And it's sometimes it's mundane. It's like, well, if you have a hybrid application, you currently have a queuing system, like get in line to get your job done. So do you have to get in line to get on the quantum, figure out what you need, go back to classical, get in line, and figure it out? Or is there an efficient way of doing some of the queuing there? And how do you sort that out? So those are some of the basic things that people propose, like, hey, that's the kind of research that we need to do. We don't know exactly how best to do that. So in that model, when you go to hybrid, it's a different market than what we have right now. So it's not about building an ecosystem at that point. It's about the pure compute and applying it to applications and algorithms. So we actually think that in a generation or two, the model will shift. The business model will shift from what we're doing right now, which is focused on selling on-premises systems, back to more of a cloud model. So when it becomes clear, these are the algorithms that are of value, these are the killer applications and so forth, we think it'll move back to a cloud model where we're selling hardware in a larger volume to put it into a data center along with classical and serving up the compute as the product, because at that point, then companies are saying, this is the type of algorithm I want to run. I want to run it 24 hours a day, and I just want to have that service. And it's not about having a system sitting in their basement or in a showcase or something like that. It is just pure, I want the compute. So that would involve many changes on our side to be able to deliver to that. Kind of, we're building by hand custom systems in a very low volume. In a model like I'm describing, it would have to shift more to more of a manufacturing of systems, a much more kind of, let's say, assembly line type fashion of having a lot more output of systems. But we think that that's maybe 2 generations from now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that was also what I was hinting at, and I thought the assumption that this would be how it evolves, and there is obviously a lot of hype in the market, and there are a lot of over-promising on rapid growth. Then there is fears of a quantum winter, and if you look at your background, you've done this at tech companies where I would assume there was a more stable outlook on a marketing and product strategy. How do you set that up from an organizational standpoint today? I mean, how do you market against the hype, and how you keep that tension of growth and progress from a structural standpoint, not only in the market but also within the organization?
I think we try to stay true to. I guess everyone would say that, but we try to be accurate with what we're saying, and we take a more educational view with our marketing materials. If we give a talk at a presentation or at a conference, or we're talking with groups who come and visit, what we try to do is explain where we are as an industry, what the journey looks like, and where we're going, and be honest about where we are. So, and that journey talks about, the physical qubit journey. First, if you're going to have a quantum computer, you have to show you have qubits. You have to show that they have fidelity. You need to do some of these kinds of demonstration, NISQ algorithms, types of things. Then you need to start on the path to building a logical qubit. And here's all the things you need, and why do you need a logical qubit, and explain all of these things. And then here's the companies that are making progress with logical qubits, which is not all of them. So it's there was a lot of confusion at the end of last year because there was a flurry of news announcements about various groups doing certain things with logical qubits. And people are like, I don't understand what's going on with it. So we made materials that explain, here's these are the papers that came out, here's what they're reporting. And people start to see, oh, well, the hype was everybody was talking about this one. And yeah, that was about one logical qubit. And ours, well, we didn't hear too much about that. Yeah, that was 28 logical qubits that we had. So it starts to open eyes about understanding that what's seen in the news is not necessarily reflective of what the progress has been in the industry. And I think that's the best way. It's just education, people understanding context, understanding what they read. I think some of the hype is driven by the market, which is it's both good and bad, right? Bringing capital into quantum is great, and the companies who are doing that, fantastic. they have objectives that they need to prove out to the market, increase that revenue growth, and it provides new opportunities. But there's a lot of people who are invested in quantum in the retail market, of buying stocks and things, which it seems to be more of a momentum play. Like, I don't know the details, but quantum sounds good, so let me jump in. And that's also a driver of hype, which can be dangerous.
Yeah. Now, and also to understand, we talk about 1 million, logical qubits or millions of qubits, and you look at 1 in 28, it seems like there is, but then to understand that you could actually do something in a research level with 28 qubits, right? And I think that is also something that's very hard to grasp, that, the progress and the exponentiality and the roadmaps that are there, that is something that is very different than what you've seen in different paradigms of technological developments. And I think for leaders and managers, it's hard to grasp that. But as you said, and I think this is a valid point, is that everyone would say that. I think you said that a couple of minutes ago, right? And now most of these quantum computing companies have a roadmap and they try to deliver and they're getting more into those structures. How do you differentiate then sales pitches to enterprises, or in particular to researchers, when you look at that logical qubit roadmap and as it still emerges? How can you differentiate in a field? I mean, you are out there on the one hand, supporting everyone else to have progress to fuel the industries, but there are very different approaches to quantum computing. And at Atom, you have your, conviction that you're on the right path. And my question would then be, how do you differentiate on the sales side then?
Well, so the differentiation for now is about providing the best tool set that you can. So that comes down to very much specifications of the system, so capabilities of the system. So offering largest numbers of qubits, and then a little bit more nuance. Some of these features, like I was mentioning about mid-circuit measurement, is a huge feature to be able to enable, and only a few companies even have the ability to do that. Very long coherence times, all-to-all connectivity. All of these things, they sound kind of in the weeds, but together what that means is you have everything you need to build your own error correction. So there are lots of ideas of how to build a logical qubit, and everyone wants to research. I have my ideas. I want to look at those. And what you need are the basic building blocks of logical qubits. You need these capabilities as fundamental pieces to be able to do that research. So the differentiation happens because there are very few platforms that could even provide this kind of thing. And the combination of all of them is what's making our systems particularly special. And then looking forward to, well, how do you differentiate on the more of the future, these economically valuable applications? Well, the best differentiation is to be there first. So nobody's there. So it's a race, and everyone needs to get to certain minimum numbers. And the expectation is you need at least 100 logical qubits of decent quality. Logical qubits aren't a binary, you either have it or you don't. They are a quality-driven thing as well. And so can you push the error rates down so that you can have long algorithms and have about 100 plus logical qubits to start doing some of these valuable applications? And so the differentiation comes in having that, being the first to offer, here is the platform that can do it. And with our type of scaling that we have, we will be able to get there within the 1 and 2 generations to be able to get to 100 and 1,000 logical qubits.
So when you say generations, can you put a timeline on that?
Yeah, we're about 2 to 3 years per generation. So the great thing about neutral atom technology is the ability to scale. So we scale at 10x per generation. We're on the order 1,000 qubits. We have 1,200 plus qubits now. Our next generation in 2 to 3 years will be a 10,000 qubit, give or take, system. And beyond that, it'll be 100,000 physical qubits. Now, the ratio of physical to logical looks like you can do quite a bit with about 100 to 1. And so we see that with our current system, we can do 50 logical qubits that are of lesser quality, but still usable for some fantastic research. The next 10,000 physical qubits will convert to around 100 logical qubits of better quality. And so really kind of start into these valuable applications. And then at 100,000, we will aim for 1,000 logical qubits of very high quality.
So we were looking at a roadmap where you would predict that within 3 to 4 years, you would get to 100, error-corrected logical qubits at stability, and then within like a 6-year timeline, you would get to 1,000.
That's all right. Yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting. That's good. And I mean, you've done this in the past. You've built these organizations. You've gone out and marketed, driven the sales organization. What are the different, I would say, different channels that you would like look at today when you're responsible for this field in a quantum tech? Is it conferences? Is it communication? You talked about publications. Is it a direct C-suite access or an outreach? What are marketing channels that you're seeing are working, and what do you predict over the next years will be the main marketing channels for Adam and for you to focus on to build that early access to decision makers and to new clients?
Yeah, I think the strategy is essentially twofold. One is to build awareness and credibility within the business community. And the other is the same thing on the technical side, in the technical community. So on the technical side is more of the obvious doing research, writing papers, publishing those papers, participating in technical conferences, and moving the ball forward on the technology. That's a little bit more standard. The other side is the business side. How do you kind of reach out to that? And that is through some of the quantum conferences that have essentially kind of highlight all the vendors, and people get to talk about what they're doing. That introduces people. Getting press for quantum is there's a lot of learning there for quantum companies who have not been trying to get that press. But one of the key things is if the story doesn't have a stock ticker somewhere to quote in there of what kind of companies involved, there's less desire to publish that in the business press. And so doing collaborations, getting involved with groups and enterprises that have that kind of visibility helps tremendously to get the word out about what quantum is doing. I think the third aspect actually is with government types of things. So and that globally, all kinds of government folks, and there's lots of organizations which are either consortia types of things or even lobbying of governments themselves to just drive the awareness so that public policy, especially when people are thinking about, who's thinking about creating economies and jobs and, strategic capabilities for regions and nations, well, it is in government. And so building that awareness is a key part of the strategy. So awareness across all three of those things, and then looking for the opportunities to get them to work together, because usually the most successful types of engagements are ones where it's got a little bit of each represented in the deal, because governments have their motivation, but they're not going to spend public money unless they think it's well spent, and it's well spent when they know that people are actually going to be using it. And so knowing that, yes, the technical community says, this is a very good system. We need this for our research. It'll be fully utilized. And companies saying, this is going to help us with these types of applications. And yes, we're going to build it. And the government can say, okay, yes, this is a good use of public funds, and this is going to meet our strategic goals. And so getting all of them together is actually part of the challenge of building the opportunities.
Yeah, and I think when you look at that from that perspective of then a quantum startup, so I mean, there are a lot of research, a lot of spin-outs of the research departments. How would you approach it as a startup then today? Or is that not even possible anymore because we have so many significant players in the various fields? I mean, it seems to me that, having a DARPA collaboration, Microsoft, NVIDIA, that's kind of the highlights of progress. And you could always look at it from the other way around and say, well, NVIDIA could do a spray and pray and just approach any hardware supplier company. But as a startup today, how would you use metrics or structures that you could, envision some kind of sales pipeline and get into that broader field? Looking also how the recent months and how the funding has, fueled some really large hardware companies. Is it even possible for new approaches from startups, from your view, looking at the commercial aspect of things?
Yeah, it was only a few years ago that neutral atom technology, which is what we use, but there's a few other companies doing that, was considered the dark horse. That was a term thrown around. You would see article after article saying, like, this is what superconducting's doing, trapped ions shown quite a bit. But hey, there's this dark horse, neutral atom. And a few years later, here we are with the leading results coming out of trapped ion and now neutral atom exceeding that. And so, oh, okay, well, that's coming mainstream. And so you have even superconducting leaders saying like, yeah, between superconducting and neutral atom, this is where it's at. And so we actually got a question recently of like, well, are you worried about other dark horses coming out and superseding you? Yeah, there's opportunities for companies, new technologies, startups who have some better way of doing it. And I think my advice to them would be to understand what your differentiators are. So if you're just doing another version of superconducting or something like that, if you're not bringing something to the table that's going to exceed it, I would think you would struggle. But can you improve something on at least one performance vector? If you're not making more qubits, are you making them faster? Are you making them more reliable? Or do you have a faster path to scale? Like, is there something that puts you ahead? Because there's more vectors than just how many qubits do you have or how many logical qubits. I can mention like one of the things that we compete on when it gets down to the more nuanced things is the engineering of our systems. So not just having a university lab, spaghetti optics and cables all over the place. Our systems are designed to be implemented in more of an industrial application. So very clean modular setup of optical subsystems, which are hot swappable so that, if something goes wrong, we don't have somebody leaning over the table with a wrench. We pull out the box, put in a fresh one, and go debug it on the side so that, within 30 minutes, you're back up and running. Other things about how the system's engineered to make sure that it can continuously reload atoms so that once you're set up and you start running, you don't have to stop, dump everything out, and reload everything, which may only be seconds or less in time, but on the order of if you have to do this with every operation, your machine will be very slow. And so tackling some of those kind of nuanced things through engineering is a big differentiator for us in particular. So all those things would be to say to a startup, you got to bring something special to it, of course, as in any business. I mean, that's not quantum specific. That's just, business 101. But I think sometimes when startups or technology groups, particularly coming out of academia, they're very focused on their technology and like just making it work. And I think they have to rise up one level and say, okay, how's it differentiated and what can I bring new to the market?
Yeah, and in that sense, I also want to touch upon the aspect that, in particular in the US have been very good at in the previous paradigms of technology. It's around the brand building and the aesthetics, the design of things. And we have here a lot of scientists, and without any stepping on any toes, they have a very good focus on, the functional part of things. And how important do you think now that brands, even the design of a quantum computer, if we look at like the rise of Apple as a brand, you could even take a Tesla, from design perspective. How important is that right now in the quantum technologies, particularly in the hardware spec, to say that, okay, we're not just doing functionality, we also are designing a brand here. We are tapping into emotions. And by doing so, we get that media traction, the awareness. How would you rank that with Adam and your approach? How much do you emphasize design and brand in a classical sense in your approach?
Yeah. From a customer's point of view, we had it very clearly laid out. The number one priority is that it works and works well, right? So meet the specs and be performant, most important thing. But when you consider what customers are buying systems for, it is a bit of a showcase. It is look, we brought this capability to our region, and this is an important thing. And it's been many systems that have already been deployed from our competitors, same kind of an idea. It's like, here it is. And people want to look at it. In the early days, some of the quantum computers that were out there were just kind of big black boxes, and it turned out they would get people every day come in, I want to take a selfie with this big black box behind me because inside's this quantum computer. And it didn't matter so much that it was just a monolithic box. It's the idea of what's inside. And so I think since then, a lot of thought has been put into how do we make them more captivating, and what does a quantum computer look like, and how should it be? We in particular work with a firm that had a designer who was a former Cray system designer, and Cray is famous for some of their early systems for the innovative design that they had about kind of not just a box with wires, but shape and form and some beauty in it. And we're in no way unique amongst the quantum hardware providers about trying to have a nice looking system that it ideally kind of conveys what's going on with the system, but if nothing else, becomes more of an iconic type of, this is what quantum computers are and can be. We'll continue to evolve that, but it is an important aspect of showing off the quantum systems and having people become familiar with it, because many people, general folks don't know what quantum is. And so how can you introduce that in a nice way? Here's what it can look like, that kind of thing.
I mean, we've seen the golden wires images. Those are the typical ones that you relate to.
And we fought against that. So, whether you're Trapton or neutral atom, you say, no, that's not what a quantum computer looks like. But it's difficult to come up with a different iconic image of this is what it looks like. It's there's no particular one piece that says that's the one.
Right. From the chandeliers to something so sexy you want to lick it, right? That's kind of sort of. Yeah, no, but this is, so you've been with Adam for some couple of years now, or more than that. But if you look back to the partnerships and what you have achieved, are there some milestones that you want to highlight where you are very proud of, and also in terms of progress where you had the feeling that this is like a big step towards a commercial future for quantum computing?
Yeah, as being focused on commercialization, the best part of being in that side of the business is you get to ring the bell, made the sale, that we're at commercial when you've gone through the full process of starting all the way from defining what should this offering be. Like, yes, we have the technology, but we're going to combine this into some single offering with certain kinds of specs. And there's the technology itself, and there's all the things, all the way up to the things you're describing about, like this enclosure, this wrap for it, and what does it look like, and how do we position it, all those aspects. And then through the selling process of doing the things you mentioned before, reaching out to the right channels, building those collaborations and consortia and so forth, and getting all the way to the point of actually making the sale and having people kind of complete that full circle journey of, it's truly a business now. And now we get to go do more and sell some more. And so I think continuing on that journey is great. So for me, it's when that culmination happens. It's always many, many years of work to reach that point. So for me, that's the payoff, is when you get that at the end.
Nice. Are there structural things that you see now that are different in terms of processes or tools or sales or marketing that is very much different with this technology than the companies that you work with in the past?
I think most there's the big players in quantum, and then there's startups. From the startup point of view, a lot of the challenge is actually building into a business that is following best practices of businesses. So, and that's usually a generic to the startup journey, but in quantum particularly, is when you have a small team, just build this quantum computer. You got a dozen people, you just mob it and tackle whatever just needs to be tackled and make this thing work. And, you can have your morning meetings and everybody's standing around like, okay, here's what we're going to do today. Okay, break, let's go do it. When your team grows to 50 or more people, it's much more difficult to get a room big enough to hold that many people, let alone, just have everyone if you took, 1 minute for each person to say, here's what I'm going to be going and working on, you're taking up a lot of the morning to actually get something done. So things have to change business-wise, business process-wise. You start getting into standard things. How do you organize? How do you have managers and people reporting to managers? And how do you have policies? And how do we work together? And so that growth as a business is one of the challenges it's not unique to quantum, but it is because quantum groups are going through this journey. How do you become more standardized? And I think the other side of even in large companies where you're doing quantum, The challenge is that quantum is the new thing. It's not the main line of business. And so even if you're a big company, you say, I have this giant sales force and I can just leverage them. Well, not so easy. It turns out all of these big companies have ways of doing sales. Sales folks get incentivized, and is quantum something that they can offer and get some commission for selling? Is it set up so that they can do that? Sometimes not. And if there's an established business of like, look, I go into my same customer, I know what they're going to buy of this other product that we already sell, and that you want me to go and sell quantum, and is there enough revenue in that to make it worth it? Like, or it's very hard to explain what you have. I can't explain that. I'm just going to stick with what I know. So there is that type of can you get the focus, the mind share focus of your greater organization? Even if you're a big company, that's a challenge. So I think there are challenges on both sides, big or small, to getting quantum launched until it becomes a very clear value proposition and standard selling techniques. So I'll add, like, when building a team that's selling quantum, it's sometimes challenging because you get folks who come from sales and marketing of traditional, maybe tech products, but more of traditional things. And the first day they'll say, okay, what's my value proposition? And like, well, it's nuanced. This is going to take some learning. And like, well, where's your spec sheet? I can just go and sell it. Like, not so easy. It's not just about the specs. And so in some cases, it's easier actually to teach quantum experts. Like, the quantum side of things, let's teach the business side of that instead of going the other way around of like, hey, you're a business person. That being said, there are certain particular things, people who know how to sell, the process of selling, regardless of what it is, just a widget. The process of selling is an art form, and getting people who are familiar with that is very valuable. So there's always a balance in this, so it's not one or the other, but having a team of some folks who know sales in and out and what they should do, and other folks who know technology in and out or are learning the sales, and I include marketing with that as well. But getting that right balance on the team seems to be very crucial.
Yeah. I mean, that's the old dilemma, people coming back from a good or a very good meeting and you ask you, where's the contract? So getting the ink on it is a very different skill than having good meetings where everyone is happy, right? So I get that. But also, yeah, you mentioned that transition into the more infrastructural part of sales, where you have big partners in high performance computing centers or providers of technology, basically for various use cases. How do you see the other aspect of that by having strong partners on the front end, on the application layer, where you have no-code platforms where people can start to work on their use cases and describe their problems? So you take out that understanding of quantum physics and coding or programming, and you can work on actual business cases. How important do you see collaborations and partnership with these type of companies? Because I think integration partners, be it the consulting companies or tech companies that focus on the front end or the application layer, becomes very important also for hardware suppliers, right?
I think the purpose for doing those types of application development it always leads back to, how is this helping my business go forward? And with our business being focused on hardware, we would ask, like, how will this sell more hardware? And I think that could be at a very broad level of, if we're helping the industry identify where people should be envisioning what quantum can do, that's one thing. Like saying, hey, here's an application for quantum, and like get inspired by this. That's one thing. Developing a future customer by starting at the path of like, well, how is this going to be good for you when quantum computers have reached a certain scale? And so, just early customer development. And then also just generally helping the industry see the same thing. Like, here's if they can do it, then I can do it. And that's the kind of thing that I want to do. On the more negative side is the generating the fear of missing out. So like, hey, we did this with your competitor. What have you got going? Oh, nothing? Oh, that's a challenge, huh? So various reasons that you would do these applications. We have a small team of application folks, but we definitely rely on partners and partnering to explore them more deeply. And what we find is that there are groups around the world doing quantum applications, and each one has started to more specialize in certain kinds of applications where they have particular expertise, and we would envision leveraging them in any kind of situation with an end customer, kind of working towards the goals of that end customer.
Beautiful. No, and again, thank you so much for sharing your insights and how you approach this. It's very healthy after having a lot of technical conversation to talk about the economical and the sales aspect of this industry. But coming to that also, I would like to switch gear a little bit and talk about like the future outlook on these technologies. So I think we both are on the positive side of progress, and we like to see breakthroughs and we like to see advancements. But as we all know, there are a lot of negative aspects, potential negative aspects if you have the power to these technologies. If you have, get into these spaces, how do you look at that on a personal level, but also on an organizational level when we look at, use cases, be it defense or active military, or, the technologies that could be applied here to, you can look at quantum safe algorithms that are not applied to some companies. So you can use a quantum computer to basically hack everything, and for a lot of negative purposes. How do you see that in terms of, over the next 5 to 10 years? Do you see a lot of risk, a lot of challenges, or do you see only the positive parts of the development here?
Well, I think everyone's aware that, you can choose what you use a computer for, and particularly the same thing with quantum computers. There's things that you could do which would not be good, and we certainly don't want those bad things to happen. But I think the good far outweighs the bad, and so the focus should be just continue to push the technology forward. I think that the U.S. at least has instituted export controls, which are not burdensome for us, in the way they've been described, which is kind of like, if you're in the country list here, no problem. It's because they have similar kinds of rules to restrict access to it, and no problem. Then there's a big list in the middle of like, well, you need to like ask us, but you should assume that it's going to be okay and no problem. And there's just a very small list at the bottom of like, hey, these are not countries where you can do business. And it turns out those aren't where we wanted to do business anyway, so it doesn't really affect us. And I think that's a good starting point of just everyone being aware and being reasonable with where the technology goes. So we're certainly excited about the opportunities around the world, and we are not inhibited by those kinds of rules, but we're glad that they're in place.
Mm-hmm. So when you look at your sales organization going 5 or even 10 years down the road, what are the most exciting, pitch arguments that you have when we have these use cases, when you have a maturity? What are you selling? What do you look at? Is it in the health industries and, the optimization, finance, material design? Where do you see the most promising future use cases and sales scenarios where there is not only a very high economical impact, but also a very net positive impact for humanity?
I think there's not a particular one that I think has benefit. Any of these things that quantum computers will do is going to be valuable, and it's going to speed up technology development across all of these industries. It's going to make products cheaper. Like the more efficiently you can do what you need to do, the better off things get. So it'll just generally push technology forward on a number of fronts. I really like the idea of the sustainable aspects of it. So using less electricity and resources to do large amounts of compute is going to be helpful to the world. I've always said, like, if I wasn't working in quantum, I'd want to work in nuclear fusion, because I think, solving an energy problem opens up a lot of doors and solves a lot of other things downstream from that. I think quantum is one of those technologies that solves a lot of problems, and it's not going to be any particular one that is like, okay, well, we're just going to have quantum computers do that one thing. It'll be all things and across the board. And I don't think we know yet all the possibilities of what it's going to do, but having just raw, pure quantum compute power is going to be the key. And so getting there is our focus, and just get there as quickly as possible.
Mm-hmm. But then, if we take that further, right? I'm very much with you, and I've been arguing for many years that the word sustainability will, be vanishing from our vocabulary. We could talk about efficiency, and an efficient use of resources is per se like a sustainable future. And I think that the marginal cost of energy, be it through fusion or fission or any other technology, in particular in solar, where we don't necessarily have an energy problem. We just have a storage and distribution problem that will also come out of new material design and advancements and localization. When we look at that and we have an abundance of intelligence with an infinite access to free knowledge, we have an abundance of energy, or at least on the marginal cost side of things, because it's just a capex issue to invest. When we look at these exponential technologies, we could have, the promising outlooks on chips that we could use for humanoid robotics, and potentially merge these technologies where you merge, robotics and the mechanical part of it with AI and the quantum computing and biotech. Isn't there also a future scenario where there is too much progress or too rapid progress for society? Getting off to closing out this, as I always do, on a more philosophical note in terms of the outlook for humanity. When we have these computational, capacities 10 years down the road, what is it left then for you and I and other, individuals amongst our human species to do? If all of these things are at, almost infinite accessibility, isn't that there a risk that we will be too efficient and too much progress?
Well, putting my philosophy hat on here, I mean, I think that there's, movies like WALL-E where, people envision people just sitting around, like that's all they are, is just consumers of the tech. I don't see it that way, because just throughout history, there have been advancements that make people more industrious, and people want to do more. And they use the technology to go and do things faster and better and more efficiently. And some technologies, the classic case of the buggy whip, it goes away. You don't need it anymore because now you have an engine. And, okay, but did people stop? Like, hey, well, I've got a car that goes now, so I guess that's everything. No, they keep going. They keep coming up with new ideas and keep pushing forward. And I don't see an end to that. I don't see why, we've done it. This is enough. We've got everything we want. And that's it. Some other challenge will come up, or how can we do things even better? How can we make lives better? And how can we, sustainably grow? I think all of those things keep people going, and that there's not it's done. So I think it just keeps going.
But you don't see a lot of these jobs. I mean, if you look at 30%, 40% of jobs being replaced, we'll obviously have a challenge to a mass population, that you could argue that because of efficiency, we could look at some kind of compensation models, be it a universal base income or whatever, that we can compensate. But the argument against that is obviously a market economy, and say, if you figure out how to be efficient and have 40% or 50% bottom line, I will come across and do it for 30, and the next one for 20 and 10, and eventually we don't have sufficient margins to pay the people. And don't you see a transition phase, at least, where there is a hyper increase in efficiency, where we move from the transition from a lot of the old jobs, be it blue collar, white collar, that we move into a phase where there is no purpose to be served by a human in that particular domain. So we will have a lot of people being replaced by these technologies.
I think there's always a transition going on, and the speed of the transition maybe is what you're talking about. But yes, there's always a transition. People need to adapt. The things that our grandparents did for work is different than what we do now. Through the generations, we change the work, even through somebody's career. The kinds of programming language, when I took classes in C, that's not the popular programming language now. I would not be as effective at that. It's fortunate that I've shifted in my career. I think everyone needs to continuously adapt to that change. I don't think that's a new thing, and I don't think that the new technology has changed any part of that calculus.
That's a very positivistic outlook of the future because we've always adapted, we've always found new ways, and I think that it is to some extent true. And I could go on for hours about the reflections on how this paradigm might be different, as we had a past where we had the old economy and we built the machines and we moved some of these tasks into machines, and the new economy and adaptation to that. So what I look at today is basically that we have come to a time where it is becoming less about is it possible and more about should we do it, right? So the shift towards the very explorative path of it, and if we screw up and mess up, we can error correct. But it seems that we are moving more towards a future where the gap between science and fiction is reduced to the sense of if you can do everything with a computer, you should be do everything, and I think that holds to be true on a global scale in terms of regulations and the capacities of these exponential technologies, as much as it does of the purpose of doing something as a human being, as an active agent that kind of sort of does something on a level of, you could define it as purpose or giving purpose to life. And I'm looking at these technologies and seeing like what are these domains going to make obsolete. And to that extent of looking at history, it seems like there is a slight difference this time around about the magnitude of adaptation, the magnitude of replacement. If you look at the recent breakthroughs in AI and you look at the speed of change, and you could foresee that and anticipate how quantum computing would fuel to that, I would say, soup of various exponential technologies just growing into that. But I like your positive, very positive notion of that adaptability, but you don't see any like risk to that as a stability factor for our society and how we work together. Also, maybe looking at geopolitical tensions between the protective part of it, where we now seem to have built more borders of different approaches to this, be it like the race in the US with China or like the tensions that we have across the globe. So isn't there any, like for you personally, also a sense of insecurity and angst towards this future?
I think I put it the same as I did before, which is I think the positive outweighs the negative. And sure, there's a lot of concerning things happening in the world, but I do my part to move us forward in the positive direction.
That's beautiful. I like your repeating and underpinning the positive future, and I'm also a human that has. I think we should choose that vision. I talk about possibilism, what we can achieve, and getting a deeper understanding of the net positive that we could do with technology. We've lived for the past 50 years in progress, and I really do hope that we can continue this path. And I think you guys are doing a great job driving this new technological wave. And I thank you so much, Justin, for coming on and sharing some different insights on the sales and the commercial aspect of this, the marketing aspect. Maybe just to round it off, if you could give us some like future highlights, some near-term changes, things that you're working on, maybe just to give us a quick insight of things that will happen from your standpoint and with your organization. Where are you moving? Are there some highlights that you can let us know about that you will bring to the market in the near future?
Well, I think the biggest move in the quantum industry is the move to logical qubit era from the physical qubit era. And not every quantum company has made that leap yet, but all of the energy, if you go to conferences, other things, it's all around logical qubits. What can you do with those? It's a new stage of research. Like it's something where researchers have become re-energized. Okay, this is the next phase of things. And so as a company, that's what we're looking forward to providing to our users, which is here's logical qubit resources, either the logical qubits themselves or even just the building blocks so you can go build your own. It's temporary. That's what's, as soon as the dominant design has been out, like, okay, this is the best logical qubit. We're not gonna focus on that as much as the applications that use them. That'll be a transition, but for now, that's the most exciting thing. So for us in the near future, what we're looking to do is go from the demonstrations we've done so far with logical qubits, increase the quality of those logical qubits, which is really important, and the robustness, and then increase both the quantity and quality as we go forward.
Yeah, I was looking for some tangible, some facts, because I picked up a headline on how you are providing the world's most powerful quantum computer. I'm a Norwegian, so I'm from the Nordics, and you're sending it to Denmark. And I said, when are you going to top that and put another even more powerful computer in my home country of Norway? But with Novo Nordisk and these type of advancements, these are obviously headlines and highlights that I want to read about, because it's very exciting. And I hope that you can move even further north to my home country and continue this great work that you're doing, and with your sales organization be able to sell some of these powerful computers also to my fellow countrymen in the north.
Well, Q North, who is purchasing this system, it aims to have access for all of the Nordic countries. And so Norway will benefit, and hopefully bring a lot of strength to the region to have that kind of capability. But certainly, we'll try to expand and have more systems deployed.
One of those beautiful machines up in Norway as well. We don't want to tap into the Danish ecosystem. We want
No problem.
But Justin, again, thank you so much for coming on. It was truly great to have this conversation around the economical part of it, and to learn some insights from how you approach this. And I picked up a lot of things today. So again, thank you so much for spending the time with me.
I enjoyed the conversation. Thanks very much.